Good evening and welcome back to the channel. Last week we just forged this beautiful pattern welded Norwegian seax blade, although you can't see the pattern as it is right now. It's covered in fire scale. Fire scale is, it's one of the mechanisms of decarburization actually, and it's very abrasive. It's hard on your files, it's hard on your grinding belts. And what I like to do is dissolve it away using ordinary household white vinegar. Now, obviously, that's not something you can do if you're in a hurry, but if you have the time to let it soak overnight, and I do, then by the time you come back in the morning, all of that pesky fire scale will have been dissolved away, and you'll wind up with a nice, clean knife blade that you can begin to work on. That's exactly what we're going to do. I'm using a magnet because I'm a blacksmith. I have cuts all over my hands, and vinegar is kind of painful. But I think our blade turned out beautifully, and you can actually see some of the patterns in the steel right now. I'll point them out to the camera. You can kind of see it on this side, but on this side I think it's much clearer. So you can see where our pattern will be exposed. Right now I'm just taking it over to the wire buffing wheel and knocking all of the remnants of that fire scale off. You do need to be careful about wire wheels and buffing wheels. They can grab and throw tools almost at the speed of light. But they do leave a nice finish. I'm very pleased with that as a rough forged finish. But we're going to have to take it a lot further than that. But I do want to show you something. I'm dipping the blade into ferric chloride. Ferric chloride is the most common etching acid to reveal the patterns of the blade. But do you see a pattern? I don't. We know it's there. We'll get back to that a little bit later. What I'm doing now is I'm straightening the blade on the anvil. Obviously, you can't do this to a hardened blade. Well, actually you can if you're careful. But the blade is not hardened right now. So the little S turns and all of the imperfections in shaping. It's a necessary or natural part of working with a steel when it's hot. You can take that out when it's cold. Now, if you just jumped straight to the grinder, you can also take a lot of that out with abrasion. And we do say forge thick and grind thin, but that's not what we want to do right now. And here I'm trimming up the perimeter, and I want to clean up one side of the blade. Now later on I'm going to be doing all of the shaping of this knife by hand with files, but first I want to take the opportunity to show you something interesting. We made the steel of this knife by surrounding iron bars in carbon and holding it in high temperature long enough that the carbon could soak into the blade, or into the iron, and make steel. We made steel from iron, but the carbon can flee and make iron out of steel just as easily. Now, we've been here before with the ferric chloride, and you saw that there was no pattern on the blade, even though we know it's in there. So, as you can see, there's nothing. But when we flip it over, suddenly, there's a pattern. Now, it is very faint, that's true. But you can clearly see that there's such a difference between the surface as it was forged and the surface as it was ground. And that's because the process of decarburization has left the surface of the knife as it was rough forged as nearly pure iron. We can make steel with carburization, and we can make iron with decarburization. Our ancestors were not ignorant of that either. In the Eddas, the Norse writers will talk about the serpent within the steel. And that's very true. That's literally true. Because the serpent is not on the surface of the steel, not as it comes out of the fire. They have to go in and get it with files and grindstones. And there's going to be a lot of filing here. What I'm doing mostly is draw filing. I think that's probably the most efficient way of removing stock with a file. But sometimes I'll go at it from the side. And I do want to alter my scratch lines so I can see where I've been. This is a perfectly fine way of doing your stock removal. And I can see the pattern so clearly as I'm going at it with a file, but unfortunately it doesn't translate very well onto camera. I've tried from a couple of different angles using different light sources, and you just can't see it here on screen. But trust me, with the naked eye, it's very visible. And it will be more visible as I refine the surface, and especially as we go at it with acid. Here I've been at this filing for, half hour, 45 minutes. My shoulders are getting really tired, I'll tell you that. I've taken a couple of breaks. Here I'm going ahead and I'm revealing that pattern. It pops up so quickly with ferric chloride. There are other acids that will do a similar job, but nothing so neatly and beautifully. I'm really happy with this herringbone pattern. It is very faint on camera right now, I know. It will darken once we harden it, which won't be... you won't see the result on this video, but we will go ahead and do the heat treating step tonight. More filing, more filing. It's a good workout. I work up a sweat. And this is not necessarily exactly how our ancestors would have done this. They had grindstones. They had grinders. Now, in the Norse period, I'm not exactly sure what metal shaping would have looked like. The Romans, when they were given gifts from Germanic smiths, were very impressed with their ironwork, but they said they did not use files at all. They merely did such advanced forge work that they said you would think that the blade had been made with files and not with hammers. But I don't have records of what Scandinavian smiths were using. I know they did have files, so presumably they were filing to finish, but grindstones were just as well known. Metal scraping, using essentially a plane, it's a metal plane, can remove a shocking amount of material, and we'll probably try that on a future project. Right now, we're going through a normalization step, because even though we straightened the blade, there's still stresses in the steel, and they have to come out. Otherwise, when you do your hardening step, you'll wind up with a banana. Better. Still a few problems, but we're getting there. There are a number of ways to take any bends and twists out of a blade. You can do it at several different times, during your process. You can do it during tempering. You can do it immediately after hardening, before tempering. I like to do it right here. The blade is soft. The hammer blows, each hammer blow does add stress to the blade, and so every time that you straighten, you need to normalize afterwards. But you should be doing several normalization steps anyway. Normalization is more or less hitting a reset button on the structure of the steel. It's raising the steel to critical temperature, which is almost where the steel begins to glow. It's not quite the same temperature, but they're very, very close. So you make the steel glow, and a lot of the stresses come out of the steel. But those stresses that were there will be acting on the blade as it comes up to temperature, and as you bring it out of the forge, you'll see what you missed. And so you do it again. It's good practice for every blade to go through 3 normalization cycles, but this one I think will need a few more. Finally. Yes, that's perfect. I'm really happy with this. I hope that wasn't as exhausting for you as it was for me, but that was satisfying. Now that the blade is straight out of normalization, we can heat treat with confidence. Obviously, some things can still go wrong. Unexpected things will always happen in a heat treat, but you can increase your chances by making sure that your workpiece is heated as evenly as possible. I've finally gone ahead and invested in an oven, which helps that an awful lot. But even when you're flame tempering, if you take a piece of pipe and let the pipe be exposed to the heat, and use your workpiece, let your workpiece be heated inside the pipe, you can get a very nice even heat. We're quenching into, well, it's a fast quench oil. I use Huda Quench. It's analogous to Parks 50, and both of those fast quench oils are analogous to a water quench. They're just a little bit safer on your result, and I'm very happy with this result. You can even see it in the camera. It's dead straight. No warping at all. And there's the file skating off of that edge. That's great. Now, every hard blade needs to be tempered. The stress needs to be relieved. We did a good job of getting a lot of the stresses out of the blade during the normalization process, but hardening causes its own. And it's rare, but it has happened that a blade that's left hardened will, and just sat out in the air, will snap and destroy itself because of the stresses, the internal stresses that the hardening process has created. So you always want to temper, at least do a preliminary tempering right after hardening as soon as possible. Now, the heat treating oven would be perfect for tempering, but right now it's very hot, hot enough to harden the blade. So instead, we're going to go over to the vise and use a torch. We're not even going to bring this up to a straw color. We're just going to begin relieving some of the stresses in the steel so that I don't have to worry about it shattering if I were to drop it. That has happened. But that's all we're doing. We're just making sure that the blade is safe to handle. Nothing's changed. It's still straight. You can see the pattern in the steel. We'll be able to see it much more clearly soon, but not tonight. It's been a long night. I think that's enough for now. We'll pop it in the kiln, and I think we have a beautiful result for one night. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next video, and make something sharp and shiny next time.
Thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch more of my videos, please follow the links on the left-hand side. Remember to select thumbs up that you like the video. If you have questions or comments, please post them below. And please click subscribe and ring that bell to be updated when new videos come out.